That's the agentic AI model that you described.
Yeah.
That's really a metaprice because it all interconnects somewhere. You got to go to the collective whole. I mean, like Thomas, when you're talking about the movers, it's where they do one at a time in silos. It takes a while to figure out. You got to collect a lot of information to get it to find out who's really good and who really isn't good.
Right.
But I think that there are so many missing components that are having an impact.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello and welcome to Analysts Gone Wild. Robert Kramer with more insights and strategy. We're going to be analyzing enterprise software stories today. We're on episode 30. Sam, I know we just talked last week about how we want to start this whole project, and all of a sudden, 9 months later, here we are with episode 30. But
30 episodes.
Whatever. But here we are. We're live. We got a couple other folks joining us on the call today. So let's go around the horn and introduce ourselves, say something nice to the audience. And we'll start with John. And we're all in good moods today. We're not going to be, agitated or grumpy. We're going to be inspired. We're going to talk about like why it's so exciting to be in the IT industry and being an analyst, and why innovation is so critical for growth. So, John, what do you think?
I know what to say. I had my first cup of coffee this morning at 6:30, so the grumpiness left as the cup got lower and lower. I mean, so, a curmudgeon, maybe not. Anyway, I'm John Hansen, founder of Procurement Insights, one of the oldest blogs in the procurement industry. You can just type in Procurement Insights and I'll pop up and you can find everything you need to know about me. I've been around that long, right? It's like a dinosaur ball.
So do you know everything there needs to know about procurement?
What? Say that again?
So you're saying that you know everything that you need to know about procurement? You
never know everything, but it's a quest to know everything. The archives for Procurement Insights, for example, goes back even longer, 40 years. So, I mean, we have some history here. Some have called Procurement Insights the official, what do you call it, archivist of procurement. So all stories, you name it, case studies, etc. That's you've been around a long time, so that helped.
So, Robert, some background here, I guess. And John, I don't know whether you have looked at his writing. I mean, he brings a very unique angle in his writing. That's what I personally appreciate. So he has a lot of historical perspective, a lot of history lessons, from the IT architecture procurement perspective. Obviously, he knows a lot, and his writing is very, very, very deep.
Well, I was actually going to say, this is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, this is where efficiencies are either there or they're not, because this is where money's won or lost, and it's a big deal. And I think procurement has to be efficient, but be understood, where they're not looking to pinch every penny, but just make the best bang for the buck, right? So because they have to be able to spend, right? But they can't be so difficult to work with. So it's a big thing. And before we go to Thomas, any super big recommendation for procurement companies, or for procurement areas within companies?
Yeah, like procurement practitioners and procurement procure tech providers and analysts. I mean, we're coming up to a very, very interesting time. Late 1990s, as you may or may not know, I did a lot of research and implementations for the Department of the National Defense, utilizing AI, utilizing strand commonality, utilizing all these things that are now in the mainstream vernacular. And I think we have to start looking at procurement from the standpoint of not just being a transactional or a functional extension, but understanding how we actually influence and control the outcomes collectively. Like, like today, and you brought up a good point, Robert, which I think is important. When I looked at the list, Sam, that you provided today, PhysicsX, Vellum, Vultr, all that. Here's the funny thing. How many of those companies listed, let's say besides Capgemini, how many of those companies have ever been covered by analyst firms in procurement? And then the question you have to ask yourself is, how many of those companies should be covered because of the impact that they will have? And I think that's really where the scope has to go, is that we have to stretch our perception of what procurement entails. Because I'll tell you, PhysicsX, Vellum, Vultr, these companies have never been equated with procurement, but their impact and influence by integrating with procure technology, it's a game changer. So why don't we know more about that? And history teaches us to look beyond the boundaries of that with which we're most familiar and comfortable. We've got to start looking at things through a whole different lens. And I think that's the advice I would give, Robert, is broaden your scope of understanding.
Well, procurement's one of the main areas within a company where the focus needs to be spot on, because like you said, it's a main area. But Thomas, what do you think? Introduce yourself and tell us what you think about procurement. Since you're the CRM expert, and CRM people know more about anything than anybody else. That was a joke.
Of course.
That was bad. That's grumpy, but because CRM people, they're always they're like the people from Boston. They never think their team can lose. So,
well, as CRM people, we do, of course, know how to cause grief for procurement people.
I have all these sales.
But that's not intentional grief.
No, actually,
that's confidence.
Grief, although it's common, the grief is caused by a missing link in between CRM, demand generation, and the ability to fulfill, which is to quite an extent given by procurement.
Right.
And well, that's where you two guys, Sam and Robert, come into picture. You and the ERP side in the middle.
Yeah, we got it covered today.
To close that link. Yeah.
So how was
for me? So John took away two terms that I wanted to use as well. One is dinosaur, because I'm almost as long in the CRM arena as he is in the procurement arena. And the other one I just don't use.
So you moved lately. How'd that go? How did the procurement go in the transition?
He has a blog for that.
So let me put it like that. The procurement from my side went seemingly well.
Yeah.
So do all your research, interview a few people. The CRM process, means the sales process of the chosen party, was very well.
Yeah.
Till I found out that I got totally ripped off.
And that's how most enterprise software projects are. So
was this?
Overcharged,
the moving company, bait and switch on them. Was it the moving company did a bait and switch?
The moving company totally oversold either their capabilities or their willingness to deliver.
I think don't they sub it all out to other people, so then the price goes up. This is a procurement problem, don't you think, John?
Yeah, well, like anything. Yeah, I mean, who are you dealing with directly? What are you, who's responsible for what, and how do you manage that? But that's where you've got to get procurement people beyond the transaction level, beyond the sourcing level. You've got to get them into the relationship, the agentic elements of it, to be able to understand who's actually going to be doing what and how. And that information, by the way, is now available. I mean, it is, if you know how to access it, it's at your fingertips. The trouble is that, again, I think we're still locked in spreadsheets and other things with which we're comfortable. And of course, it's justifiable, because let's face it, over the last 40 years, most procure tech initiatives have failed to deliver the results. And so, there's a healthy skepticism, isn't there?
I don't think that from their end it was pure procurement at all.
Mm-hmm.
And well, in terms of relationships, how often do you move a household?
That's true.
This is not a repeat business. So they are, I'm speaking French right now, they care a flying fuck about the relationship.
Oh, okay. So what they're saying is once you're done, they're on to somebody else, but they're only dealing one-ups.
Yeah, it's a one-off.
And they don't care. Doesn't that
they screw you and then they are gone.
So same could be said about ERP consultants.
Eventually, as we get, and they're talking about data amalgamation, bringing it all together. The siloed events happened in the past. Nobody knew. Yeah. But now we have access to all kinds of intelligence and information if we know what to look for. So we can say, okay, so I may be one of, but the last 20 one-ofs, these guys really messed it up. They better care.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of that. I mean, is that a reasonable thought?
It is. And what little influence I have, I'll make sure that these are not getting recommended.
But don't they sub it out, Thomas, to another party so you're not in control and then the price goes up? Was that what happened?
No, actually, this was not going. The price wasn't. Well, the price went up as well in a surprise transaction because, surprisingly, a 75 foot rig doesn't get into a residential area.
Okay.
This was 3,000 on the last day.
Oh god.
And you better have it in cash because else they don't even start unpacking.
Oh my god.
So these sorts of behaviors you see in that industry.
They don't care what you think, though. It's like money.
They don't care. They only, the first thing they do is they count the cash.
All right, Sam, introduce yourself and we'll get started because it looks like you want us to talk about PhysicsX.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to have a story on moving, to be completely honest, okay? And I'm going to keep it quick because obviously we are short on time here. And we all know that.
45 more minutes. We can talk about it.
Yeah, so we all know this. I mean, I like to, make jokes about my wife, and hopefully nobody's sending this clip to my wife. This goes to moving. And generally, I have moved a lot and I have learned my lessons. And I have a lot of sympathy for generally moving industry and movers because it's a hard work. It's a real hard work. So the way this goes is, so my wife, whenever she calls any movers, and she will not give the real picture, to be completely honest. Okay. So let's say if we are moving from 2-bedroom apartment, she's going to say, hey, 2-bedroom, I've got a couch, I've got 2 beds, and that's it. And the mover shows up. Okay. What the hell is this? How did you pack so much stuff in this house? Because initially you were thinking that it's just 2-bedroom. So what I call this is expectation misalignment, and this is very real for ERP projects. Look, if you want fair estimates, you need to be fair with the guys. And again, I mean, see, I have had really, really bad experiences, but I think I deserved it, to be completely honest.
I like what you just said. You have to be, it does translate to like an ERP implementation, expectations, procurement, and CRM. That's a really good analogy.
All right. So, Sam Gupta here, Elevate IQ, host of WBS Rocks, and our focus is enterprise software. Robert, over to you.
So let's get started with the first story. PhysicsX, they raised $135 million. It's not small change. Series B funding to expand its AI native engineering and manufacturing platform. Now, they're saying this investment should accelerate product development or expansion, adoption in different industries, specifically within manufacturing, aerospace, automotive, and energy. I believe it's a company out of London. They have some interesting people that used to be part of this that were part of it. They're former automotive people in R&D from Renault and Mercedes and Bentley. So the focus is an AI native engineering software that embeds this AI across their product lifecycle. Thoughts, people? It seems like this is a pretty significant play for them, and it should drive the speeds to get them to the next phase of which would be to more revenue. I believe they're going to have some adoption issues, execution issues, integration issues, but that's kind of par for the course. Thoughts?
The good thing is that it is specific. So they are addressing specific problems instead of going OpenAI generic. Yeah, so they are creating software or models to integrate into specific solutions to address specific problems. So that's a good thing.
That is a
Whether
good.
whether they are really succeeding with that, well, time will show.
Yeah,
What I don't like about it is a bit of the hyperbole, underpin the global economy. So they're trying to make their impact probably a little bigger than they are.
yeah,
But
it's a good point. Continue. Sorry.
Solving specific problems is exactly what it's needed. Don't build generic, build something specific, and be able to use the right tool for the problem.
I mean, it should help with product life cycles and making them faster, and using digital twins to actually help get this product development a little bit faster. But John or Sam, what do you guys think?
Well, I've got to tell you something. When I look at this, and I mentioned it and alluded to it at the very beginning, how many people looking at these first few companies in procurement, analysts, etc., are familiar with, let's say, PhysicsX? How many do you think? I wish we had a live poll. How many do you think?
Oh, it's gonna be minimal. I mean, it's a pretty small company.
Yeah, but
150 clients.
But yes. Sorry. But look at the area of their specialty. I mean, just doing some preliminary research on it. I mean, if you look at, let's say, particular solution providers like Tealbook, Zip, Apollo, Converging, all of these organizations, and you look at it and say, how would this integration with the ProcureTech stack improve outcomes? This organization is a game changer. And just because we don't know it's there, it should be looked at. I mean, each of these organizations, especially when you get into engineering and manufacturing, that links to procurement, that links to supply chain. And so how does this help existing ProcureTech stacks? I mean, that's how we have to look at this. Because again, when I and Sam, you sent me the list, I thought, okay, this is interesting. I never heard of these guys. I mean, had any of you heard of PhysicsX before?
Yeah.
Or Vultr, or you have? I have.
No, I have not, but I'm familiar with PhysicsX clients like Leonardo Aerospace. There's a lot of companies that they're servicing. So there's major impact like you're talking about, but we don't know them. So what are you suggesting then?
Well, I think what we have to do with each of these, and we need to get a bigger audience for you, even bigger audience. I think we have to get analysts and CPOs more informed and educated. What could PhysicsX do in terms of engineering, integration, and risk resilience? How can it improve the CPO's goal? How can it improve supply chain resilience? You talk about twin flames and all of that. I mean, the reality is that if I look at this, if you hadn't sent me this list, Sam, I would not have ever heard of PhysicsX. Yet, as you pointed out, they're like a key linchpin in there. They improve. Vultr is the same. We'll get onto that later. But yeah, I think we have to start as an organization, not, I'll say it. We're well beyond the age of no one ever got fired for buying IBM. We're well beyond the age of belt with suspenders. And we're certainly beyond the age of saying that the biggest companies have the most knowledge and technological or technology, especially when it comes to AI, prowess. There's these companies that are there that are going to become increasingly critical. And again, I think PhysicsX is one of them. Vultr is another. I think Apollo Rise is one. I think Focal Point. I think Adapt One. These are and by the way, some of these companies have been around for a long time. How come we don't see them covered? How come we only see the same names popping up? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, we're seeing.
Or am I just on a rant? Am I just on a rant?
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to clarify something. So obviously, I mean, John, as you know, I mean, the scope of the show is slightly broader. So obviously, we are covering the enterprise software space here. Not every company, I guess, the procurement community is going to touch. The focus of this story and the company is going to be slightly more engineering, as well as product lifecycle management, NPD. Robert as correctly pointed out. So generally, the audience of something like this is going to be maybe VP of engineering in the manufacturing organization. Thomas not the software developer, VP of engineering. They don't know much about the real engineering, I guess. So here we are talking about the real engineers who are sort of producing goods for the manufacturing organizations. So my take, Thomas, on this story is going to be that this impacts the CAD market, CAD, as well as the PLM market. And if this is going to become AI native, that means the whole engineering experience changes. For the most part, if you ask any manufacturers, who are your most highly comped employees? And they are going to say mechanical engineers for the most part, because that is their bread and butter. So now what happens to them? What happens to their jobs? What happens to CAD market? Those would be my questions when I look at this story.
Yeah, but these companies are only investing in ones that they feel have the runway for success. I mean, they're not going to. 135 million isn't small change, but it's not, $500 million, but it's significant, and they see something there. I like how they can develop the products better and faster, and using some of the tools that we already talked about. But I also agree with John. I think there's a space here that is not being talked about. Not necessarily we're not responsible, but it's not in the news as much because it's the top, blue chips are the most common discussion topics, NVIDIA, IBM, and all the sorts with all the, the major cloud providers, et cetera. But these are the companies that I think will give the manufacturers another edge that they're looking for. Because you're not going to find it necessarily in ERP. You're not going to find it in some of these, standard applications that are, whether procurement or CRM. But these are really, and as Thomas pointed out, it's very niche. And I think these niche applications are really critical for the next generation of innovation. But that was kind of a rant. But I do think there's going to be, just to piggyback that, I think there's going to be some major changes in ERP, where instead of ERP being at the bottom and then feeding everything, or at the top, wherever you want to see it, the transaction data, it's going to be in the middle. And everything's going to be event driven and workflows and processes. And this can be part of that.
That's the agentic AI model that you described.
Yeah.
That's really a metaprice because it all interconnects somewhere. You got to go to the collective whole. I mean, like Thomas, when you're talking about the movers, it's, where they do one at a time in silos. It takes a while to figure out. You got to collect a lot of information to get it, to find out who's really good and who really isn't good.
Right.
But I think that there are so many missing components that are having an impact on outcomes. And again, I'm mostly procurement, supply chain, and tech guy. But I think that if you're missing a key piece, for want of a nail, do you remember that fable, for want of a nail, the kingdom was lost? That's really where I think we're coming into an era of. Okay, Thomas, you're smiling with that. What?
Yeah, well, what shall I do but smile? Using that example, I could cry as well, and I cursed already. So
in French.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
I think anything you want to say, Thomas or Sam?
Not about PhysicsX. So they are, as John said, so they are a niche player that may or may not punch above their weight.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Sam, want to close it out, or should we go to the next one, or both?
Yeah, so I'm going to have a call out for audience. If you guys are the audience listening to this show, we always look for your comments. So if you guys are listening, we would love to see some from your side as well. Any experiences? Let's go to the next one, Robert.
Okay, Vultr. They secured $333 million in growth financing. So this funding is to expand their AI-focused cloud services worldwide. I think that's it's not as niche as the previous one, but at the same time, the capital that they're raising is to scale their AI infrastructure. I'm not terribly familiar with them, John. Maybe you are more so, but I know that they're competing with the hyperscalers, which kind of worries me. But this is supposed to give them more of a flexible GPU capacity with AI workloads. Thoughts, gentlemen? I know that they're they're focused more on the gaming industry and VR, AR, fintech, but still the competition is a significant issue. But pros, cons to this, guys.
So, go ahead, Thomas. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me start with the pros. It's good to see some competition. I mean, we have the few hyperscalers, right? Predominantly 3. Count in 1 or 2 Chinese ones that may or may not get out of their walled garden, depending on politics. And then there are a few smaller ones. One of which being Vultr. So, by the way, they should choose another name. So scavenger types of animals are probably not a good idea. Sorry.
Well, maybe
I'll fill in, I guess, Robert.
Please.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I think Thomas has really good point here, and I would love to know a little bit about competition. I don't know. I mean, that would be my take. I am not terribly familiar with the space. And Thomas, I don't know if you're able to speak now, if you want to go ahead.
Well, so it's good that there are smaller ones, regional infrastructure providers, and it's important that there are, because else you're ending up with a monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, Microsoft, Amazon, or AWS and Google Cloud Services, as good as they are, limiting a market to 3 bigger players is not usually a recipe for client success, customer success. Theories say it needs 4. That's why it's good that there's at least one that tries to step up into the more global arena.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure they're on the same competitive level as those large hyperscalers, but I guess it would make sense.
They have a valuation of less than Microsoft or Amazon or Microsoft Cloud Services or Amazon do in a revenue in a month.
Yeah. John, what do you think?
Well, I think, and again, I hadn't heard of this organization beforehand, which is shame on me, but all of the preliminary research and investigation I've done, this is another organization that, again, I'm going to put on that procurement supply chain mask because, or hat, to go with my blue one here, is that there is an influence and an impact. Supply chain procurement touches everything. And it's like, I think we have to look beyond the scope of what they're doing. I agree with what Thomas said. We need to have smaller players, more innovative players. I mean, this has been an age-old problem of monopolies ultimately lead to stagnation to a certain degree, higher costs and comfort zone. But in reality, I think we have to, with these new organizations, look for avenues outside of what their core practice is to understand their impact and the greater impact it has. And I think we haven't trained ourselves to do that. I think we're still siloed in saying, well, this is a function A, this is function B, this is industry C. We can't, never the 3 should cross. But in reality, I think these players today, and I'm just going by my, again, preliminary research, I think they're game changers for the procurement and supply chain industries. And I'm just dumbfounded that, I've never heard of them, but I don't see anybody else ever covering them beyond Capgemini.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a very interesting story, to be completely honest. And I sort of am with Thomas in his assessment about this story. In my mind, when I look at a business like this, it's a very capital intensive business. So for the most part, I mean, emotionally, if you are looking at emotional version of Sam, then obviously I want to have as many players as possible. We want that everybody should have a piece of pie. But financially speaking, you know what? I mean, this business is different. It's tricky. Okay. In this case, you want to make sure it is economy of scale, I would say is probably the right term. But my question here is going to be that, okay, if these guys are doing so well, they have such high valuation, where do larger players stand Is this going to be an acquisition for them? Are their capabilities comparable to these guys? Why is AMD investing in this? Does it have something to do with NVIDIA? I don't know. Maybe there is. Because most of the larger players are actually going with NVIDIA. So there could be political forces and political alignment here with respect to companies. So those would be my questions on the story. Again, I'm not intimately familiar with the AI infrastructure space, but those are going to be my questions and assessment.
Those are good questions. I think that's time will tell, right?
We gotta get the audience to come on, give your opinion.
We don't have anybody chiming in.
What's your opinion, audience listening in? No sitting on your hands. I had to say that, but I mean, this is new ground for a lot of for a lot of us in certain ways, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole point. You bring these up is you're forcing us to think beyond the familiar.
Yeah, in the whole AI, whether you talk about AI native or AI infrastructure space, it's very new. Nobody knows, how this is going to evolve, to be completely honest. So it's good to cover them, but it's very hard to forecast at this point of time how industry is going to shape in the future.
Well, let's go to the big one of the bigger announcements, which is Capgemini, which I think is pretty interesting. WNS is significant player as well in the BPO area and also the business process management. But that 3.3 billion is obviously a big number, and it creates really a global leader from AI-powered intelligent operations with this acquisition of WNS. So Capgemini is based out of France, and WNS combining with them should expand their capabilities to scale, their customer base, AI-driven capabilities. There's some cons because of the integration of this change management. We always talk about that. These organizations are large and complex, so it could cause issues with putting everything together from a company's perspective. But this is something that we've been talking about. This consolidation around agentic AI and process operations signals them to give more of a competitive nature in this area. What do you all think, and which industries do you think this should impact the most?
So, Robert, in this case, I guess you are probably going to have a lot more background, because my understanding is that, number one, you worked for a competitor of Capgemini. That is number one. And number two, you also worked for a French company, and you sort of know the cultural alignment there, right? So maybe touch a little bit more in terms of where WNS fits and Capgemini from that perspective.
Well, they're pretty heavy in the transformation areas, right?
Yeah.
So I worked for a company called Hightouch in France as well. So it was they were both competitors of ours, and that's one of the things that companies when they do transformation, they have specific alignment offerings, from a perspective of how you're going to transform all the way down to security and business process management through those whole lines of those channels. Capgemini is a significant player, so we worked against them, from a competitive standpoint, and they were very strong. So I think this makes them stronger. So WNS is a significant company as well. So I think the collaboration should be a more stronger relationship than they had before, and should be able to, be, I guess, an overachiever from a competitive standpoint against the competition, like an Atos. But Atos itself, I've been talking to them lately, even though they're a former company that I work for, about how they're restarting their company and looking at how they can be more successful, what they didn't do in the past and what they can do in the future, and looking at their competition like Capgemini and others similar. So, I don't know how you can even say too much about this right now, except it gives them more of an arsenal of flavors to choose from to beat out to give their customers. So, Atos right now, I would say time will just tell who is best for what. But I always thought Atos was pretty strong in manufacturing, and some of these companies aren't as strong in that area, where that might be this could actually improve Capgemini's area from that area. sorry, too many of the same word, but I know procurement, this should be a help as well, but maybe John, you can add some flavor and color to that.
Well, it's interesting, and I use the Hansen Fitzgerald, which is an algorithm system I developed starting in the late 90s and modified for 2025. And two immediate things come. I look at a scoring, the Fit score table, and I look at the scoring in 8 different categories. And what's amazing is combined, the merger actually elevates in things like agent-based readiness, strand commonality, metaprice, practitioner alignment, change management synergy. So I look at it from a win-win score because it increases those capabilities. Everything else comes from that. The only thing that I would add is that realistically speaking, according to the scoring, Capgemini really does elevate the WNS offering in all the areas, with the exception of change management synergy, because WNS seems to have an edge in that regard. So, what you're looking at here is the mechanics in these key 8 areas that indicate potential outcomes are really, it's raising them. It's moving it from the subjective nature or how they fit, the dynamics, the culture. It actually moves it into saying, what is the likelihood of success? And based upon the scoring, I think this one's going to be a winner. I think this one's going to be one of those acquisitions, mergers, etc., that actually delivers measurable results and does it sooner.
Yeah.
It
certainly makes sense, because both are engaged in business process outsourcing.
Yeah.
And in business process outsourcing, there's only one way. Do more cheaper means go agentic. Whether this right now works may be debatable. I'm quite sure it will work sooner rather than later. Let's talk 2027 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to see them again, end-to-end procurement orchestration, efficiency plus intelligence, customizable and scalable delivery. They've improved in all these 3 key areas, and the history going back to where we are today in the market and where they are at this position. This was just a smart move all around.
Yes.
Well,
what comes on top is probably something that we didn't really, we sort of said it with Atos. Cap is French. WNS has its main customer base in the US, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. So this is giving significant cross-sales synergies for both parties, actually. Yeah. It's basically extending the globe. It's making both companies more global.
Yeah. And it's also, I think Capgemini is trying to differentiate themselves a little bit more too, and focusing on agentic AI, like we talked about, expanding their offerings to be more end-to-end. And like you just mentioned, they're expanding their footprint and delivery capabilities to be a little bit maybe stronger in the US, and they're targeting more verticals with this, which is, I think, very interesting. I think there's some major changes going to happen in the financial and the healthcare industries with the changes that we previously mentioned with ERP, because those same changes are happening with healthcare, and how the electronic health records changing, where there's more capabilities to have more eyes on more records and trials and clinics. So I think targeting some of these different verticals will be super important, and I think they're looking at that vision. When did you say this is closing, John?
Oh, geez. I don't know when it's closing. Okay. I don't have the exact date right in front of me. Sam, do you?
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a big, because the actual, how long do you guys think it takes to actually see results after the close? So, we might be looking at 2 years from now.
Yeah, but here's the whole point, and this is the thing. At least you're starting in a position where both companies together are stronger than they were individually. There's a logic to the acquisition. It isn't just to get market share. Although it's important to expand into new markets, let's face it, the majority of M&As and acquisitions fail. They always have, even before the high-tech and agentic era, simply because, what was the motivation? What's the cultural mix? What are all these factors coming together? So, there's a lot of moving parts here. But again, you've got to start somewhere. And it is very clear that together they're a much better organization and more capable than they are separately. And this is obviously a strategic, well thought out strategic move, rather than just let's merge an acquisition to merge brands or get bigger market share or access to bigger markets. That's my take from it. I don't know. What do you think, Thomas?
It clearly is strategic. It clearly is. I'm not so upbeat in, let's say, merging two different companies, especially if it's a European, French,
right,
on top of it, with an American.
I'm in Canada, right? So we have Quebec in the rest of the country. So I understand.
Yeah, right. I lived in Montreal. Yeah,
so there you go.
Yeah. So culture will matter.
But it says they're closing the end of this year, though. So
change management will matter.
Yeah.
And if they get that done well, then this is a triple win, actually, for both of those parties as well as for their clientele. Yeah.
Okay, Tom, so what do you think the odds of success are going to be? Are we going to look back at this 2 years from now and say, wow, this was really great? I mean, if you had to bet your money on it, what would you say?
50-50 right now, because I don't know their cultures well enough.
Right.
And their cultural fit. The cultural fit and how to deal with cultural fit. This will be what makes this a winner or not.
Well, that's a good point. I think it's much higher than that. And I think if companies are going to spend $3 billion, you better get your change management together.
Well, Salesforce,
it's a mandate. You
96 billion on Slack, and that took quite some while to become a success.
Well,
so what do we throw out the Gleicher formula cookbook now and say, okay, what are we going to do? Because is there that sense of urgency for change within the organization?
Guys, some very interesting layers, I guess, that you guys have, brought in on the story. A couple of things from my perspective, I guess. So here, one thing that the story is telling, and they are telling that, they have acquired this to gain agentic AI capabilities, which is slightly off in my mind, because I would see this as more of the legacy business. But Thomas, I think you brought up a very interesting layer of the BPO, BPS business. And that's very interesting, because that's where I guess you are going to have the majority of the agentic investment. That's where you are going to have the real return. If you look at this more from the agentic AI, where you are going to get the biggest bang for your buck, right? So that's my take. Now, Robert, to your comment, alignment with their business models, I guess. Capgemini, I don't know how deep they were in the industrial sector, but we can see some customers here for WNS as well. It doesn't seem like they are very strong in the industrial base either. So their customer base is going to be very similar. Overall, I see this as global expansion that you guys have already pointed out. But again, I guess, and I think you asked one question, John, whether you would invest in this or not. I guess, it's very early right now overall to predict how the agentic investments are going to provide the returns. But overall, if I were to invest, I'll probably invest in the BPO business, where you can do a lot.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So how do they expand into industrial sectors, or do they stay away from that?
They don't have to if that's not their market, I guess.
Yeah. Because I think that's what I was, the manufacturing and those industrial sectors are pretty significant players. So not being in there is, I think will cap you at how far you can expand. But I don't know. We'll have to see. I think it's a winner acquisition. I think so.
It is definitely a good acquisition, but definitely.
So, okay. We have any questions? Anybody on the line with us, or we're not? Sam, you sure we're live?
To death today.
Yeah.
Well, it's August.
I was wondering about that.
August, right? People are on holidays too, right?
Yeah.
What? Holidays? What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You took your holiday with your move.
Okay. So, you want to do one more, Robert?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Yeah.
Vellum, which I think I said it right. They raised $20 million in Series A to grow its enterprise AI development platform that focuses on building reliable, production-ready AI systems. Is this more of a Sam? You have to correct me, but is this more of a a way to monitor your AI to make sure that it's governed correctly, that the standards are set up in the way that they're supposed to. Sam, maybe you can pivot off of that.
Yeah. So I guess, there is a lot of layers to what is required as part of your technology stack when you look at this more from the development perspective. So I would see these guys as more of the development augmentation, and Thomas probably is probably going to have more insight. So obviously you have the hardware, you have the infrastructure, and then you have the real development technology. So you are looking at the development of any sort of AI product development that companies are going to be doing. And again, I don't think we have covered enough companies in terms of how this space is going to evolve. It's very early right now for each of those, how that is going to change. But it's always good to sort of keep an eye on these companies, what they are doing, how they are disrupting the market. For the most part, the way I see this is, this is probably going to disrupt maybe AWS, Google. That would be my take. Microsoft Azure. But are they going to be acquired by them, or they are going to be independent company? Is probably going to be a question.
Yeah. Thomas, what do you think?
They are in a young market. Well, it's derivative of the DevOps market, basically, but it's a fairly young market. So there is not yet a clear, let's call it, leadership established. So they are fairly early, having 20 million in addition, but certainly is a vote of confidence, as they are also fairly young. So I'm kind of split. Of course, as a young company, they are full on the hyperbole, so full in the hype market. They do something that is important and will stay important. But then there are plenty of companies, large and small, that can get similar services from an existing provider that they more or less trust, call it Microsoft, that is already in there. So what they will have, capital raising or not, is an uphill battle. So for them, it will stay important to stay focused on their market segments till they are strong enough to, like an onion, grow, or like a tree, develop additional rings from a kernel.
Okay. What do you think, John?
Well, I'm listening, and there's good points. One of the things that Thomas just said, I'm wondering which end customer benefit would there be? Which kind? You mentioned, are they going to deal with a client's going to deal with Microsoft or somebody they already are familiar with and have a relationship with, or a new company coming in? And one of the questions is going to be is which companies are most independent, I would say, in their construction and bringing together technology. Like, there's companies out there who'll go in and say, okay, show us what we have to do. Other ones will say, we're in control, we're driving. This is where we want to go, and we know what pieces we have to pick. I think that's where their main play is going to be. What is interesting to me, and again, looking at it from a procurement standpoint, et cetera, and these are two key factors: the measurable outcome, just doing an assessment, and again, this is just preliminary, is that there's a 30 to 50% faster AI deployment capability that they can do, which means quicker automation and analytics adoption. So if you look at that, how many people right now with AI, with new implementations and whatnot, how many are saying we're not getting the traction we need? Is this a piece that they can put in, and who has the expertise to make that piece work? Yeah. On the other side, they're small, which means their bench strength may not be great to go beyond a certain number of clients. So how do you scale that? Those are the questions that come from me. I have no doubt they can do great things. It's a matter of scalability of their bench strength and their ability to expand, and understanding who their best client alignments are. Because at the end of the day, and agree or disagree with me, I've always believed that 60% of success of any implementation ultimately falls on the doorstep of the client, the customer, the end customer, and not the provider. So,
not more.
What's that?
if not more.
If not more. Exactly. And and by the way, I don't want to go off on a tangent. That's the problem I have with AI, agentic AI and everything, is that there's this mindset saying on the customer side, well, agentic AI will know everything. We just have to throw it out there and it'll fix all our problems magically at the waving of the wand. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's almost like, and I wrote about this earlier today, is that, you know, AI is a reflection or an extension of our experiences and expertise. It's not the source of our experience and expertise. It augments what we know, but it's very much a symbiotic relationship. And I think that, you know, that's why a lot of the initiatives, especially AI, are struggling now, is they all thought it would be a magic wand. It's not. It's a great tool. It's an extension of what we can do. But, you know, I think this is a great move. Again, the only concern that I would say is do they know their client base, and do they have the bench strength to be able to expand and grow and maintain the same level of service performance?
Let me add a third concern there, which is ecosystem. They need to play well with at least one, if not two or three, within 2 or 3 ecosystems, development ecosystems.
You're right. That's a point. Listen, you reminded me, Thomas, way back in the late 90s, I remember wanting to build a bridge from an Oracle to what they used to call bolt-on solutions, which you know what those were, and they were great. And I remember the Oracle exec telling me, we don't get out of bed in the morning for anything less than $1 million. I mean, so there was difficult bridges back then. I think it's much more seamless now. I don't think you have that financial gun to the head, but still, you're right on that. Where do you fit in the ecosystem? How do you streamline into that? And you're going to need the customer to actually be the one to be the guide on that, to help you to navigate into what they have and what their ecosystem is.
Yeah, but don't you think the vendors are doing the customers a disjustice, that they're so worried about features and functionality and selling the next best thing versus talking about how I get to even use those features? So we're so far away from standards, I believe. And I mentioned if ERP goes to what I said, being in the middle versus at the bottom, that should help move things along. But I mean, companies are all at different levels of innovation aptitude. So when you sell something to a client and you say, this is where you're going to be, I have no idea what 10 steps or 20 or 100 I need to do to actually use that feature.
Well, yeah. And here's the big disconnect. And this is a simple one. And I did some analysis on this. 70% of all solutions that are acquired by a company are made at the boardroom C-suite level. Only 30% at the mid-management and frontline execution are engaged in that selection process. Yet, to make it work, it's the exact opposite. You need 70% of your success is based upon execution on the front line. So it doesn't make sense to me that you have this disconnected or disjointed decision-making process. It should be a more seamless agent-based integration with different stakeholders and understanding how all the pieces fit together. Otherwise, you're building horizontal silos. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's transparency within a company. So that's called management. I don't know what else to say. I mean, if those people probably can't make a decision because they're not at the level that they're.
But they can contribute, though, to the decision. They can be saying, here's your orders. That's it. Make it work. Why don't we find a way of communicating? And I'm talking about even in between at the C-suite level, at the interdepartmental level. I mean, in 1980, there were hard walls between different management groups. Well, now those are going. But this is going back to your point that you raised, Robert, and I think this is important, is this feature, function, and benefit. Yeah. Shiny paper. I don't care what the shiny paper is. If you don't have that communication, collaboration, capability, and transparency within your organization, no matter how great the technology is, it's not going to deliver the results that you hope.
You're right. And that's why, you want to have steering committees, people from different levels that could be on there to make that decision.
Yeah.
But, Sam and I talk about it all the time with the ERP. I don't think that companies use more than 50%, 60%, even 40% of their ERP because they haven't implemented it right.
Yeah.
Sam, a lot of discussion there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great discussion. So I don't know if you want to wrap. I guess we just have 3 minutes right now. So yeah,
We'll head in that direction. But
yeah,
what do you think about what I just said about ERP, and that translates to other applications as well, and that has to do with transparency and
yeah. So some great discussion, I guess. But overall, when I look at this, ERP has a place, and this is going to be more of the development of ERP, which is not the same as the implementation of ERP. These two are two completely different concerns. A lot of vendors and the technologies that we have reviewed today are more of in the development of the tech stack. When you look at this technology, that is more, it's sort of coming across as more of the core development platform, as Thomas pointed out. But they also had a note at the bottom. If you want, I can bring up the screen again. At the bottom, it could be a no-code, low-code player. So that could be a change in the market direction, I guess. Is it going to impact those low-code, no-code? Are we going to have real development in the AI world? We don't know at this point of time. So where the market is going to go with that is going to be a question. So, and my take on these stories is that the reason why they are getting so much investment from investors is they are very confused right now. And it's more of the gold rush because they don't know enough, but they don't want to miss the bus. So that's why they have to invest in pretty much everything. But there is going to be a time when we are going to have little consolidation, little alignment in terms of where the market is going to move. So that would be my take, Robert.
That's good. Well, I appreciate all that. We'll wrap up and trying to think of what we could all talk about. So why don't we all say how AI could improve your move if you were going to do it all over again? Let's start with Thomas, since he had so much heartache. How would you use AI different? Because obviously there were some problems.
Not necessarily different. What I wish for is that I need to do less validation. So that's
why is that?
I mean, I'm using it. What do I use it for? Business as well as privately, research. Yeah, so I don't code, so I don't need AI coding. So if I do research, right now I need to check every statement and every source used, because they get more misphrased, misused than my latest intern.
Okay, John, what do you think?
I think you have to, build on what you said, Thomas. You have to go and broaden the number of models you engage and the levels of engagement you go through. There's, level 1 engagement, then you go to level 2, which takes on other criteria, and level 3, you have to go through that process because, again, otherwise, you're really using AI as Google on steroids to a certain degree. And by the way, you know what I think? Honestly, somebody asked me this and I said, I look at generative AI, agentic AI, all of that, the way I used to look at my Funkin' Wagnalls, the microfiche, the Google search, the Yahoo and everything. It's the tools. And what's great about the AI is that the programming capability that you can have to access this information, but it still requires the critical thinking, which I think is your point, Thomas. You can't check out your brain and say, okay, AI, what do I do now? Because
it's certainly a helper. I mean, how do I get myself up to speed in a short time with all those stories? Many of them I don't really know about.
Well, look at today with our list of companies, Vellum, etc. I didn't know any of these companies.
I just use Perplexity and ask, hey, what is this? What are they about? What's their competitive position? And how does this thing, use item, change this?
Well,
then I think about it.
Well, the moving industry is a working class, labor intensive, union heavy industry. And I think AI isn't going to help a tremendous amount there except give you names. But they're always handing off to the next fleet to move, and it's sold out, and so you're going to get prices raised or held hostage. So I'm not sure AI can help out with that. I think everybody that I've seen that's moved has taken it on the chin a lot.
AI in combination with robotics.
Yeah.
So, well, the long haul driving is one of the most problematic areas.
Yeah.
The moment you can safely and securely, sort of reliably, get a truck from A to B on the long haul network, from warehouse 1 to warehouse B, driven by a robot, that will be a boon for that industry. And who gets that? The company that gets that done first has a significant advantage above the other ones that make up this broken industry.
Yeah. So quick question, and then we'll move on to Sam. Was it the same truck and people that picked up your stuff that delivered it? So that's the problem. So if it's the same one, I think you're in good shape. If you're not, they're selling it to bidders. That's how the industry works. They're more brokers. So Sam,
the company claims that the teams involved, the core teams minus the local talent, the local muscle, are employees. It's what they put as one of their core advantages, which I don't subscribe to anymore.
AI didn't do a good enough job there, maybe. That was a joke, but anyway.
AI didn't do a good job there in hiring. In the applicant tracking system failed.
Sam, what do you think? And close us out.
Yeah. So in my mind, I guess when I look at AI, one thing AI is really good at, which you would not expect. Okay. AI is a bot. Obviously, we all know this. Okay. But it's a really good for brainstorming. Obviously, when you are brainstorming, you don't want to ask your spouse, how you are going to come across. But at the same time, if you ask AI can tell you, okay, whether you are being fair in your dealing, whether you are crossing line, that all of that can be done using AI. Just try to ask the scenario and tell you how you are going to come across. And sometimes you might not be able to think that way. You just don't have mental bandwidth at that time. You are probably stressed or whatever. You are frustrated, angry, so that's where AI is really good at. On that note, I'm going to close. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We meet every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'll see you next week.
Take care.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.